Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. I'm Yogesh Kottavar, and today, as part of our daily news analysis, we will be covering three most important articles from The Hindu and Indian Express. So, the first article of the day is India-China reach deal on easing LAC tensions on the page number 1 of The Hindu. Now, this article is very important for us to understand India-China border disputes which are going on since years and what is exactly happening right now. The second article talks about secularism. Secularism is the core feature of the constitution set by Supreme Court. Now, secularism is an important topic. It is mentioned in the syllabus directly as well as it is core part of our constitution, becoming very important for the examination. And third topic, the case for a nature restoration law in India on the Hindu page number 6. Now, there is a discussion going on that in India, we can bring a nature restoration law. So, we'll understand what exactly it is. Now let's start with the first article. Before that, I would like to say, if you have any kind of question, please ask in the comment box. Okay. So the first article related to India-China border dispute. The article becomes important for prelims as well as mains. For prelims because there are many locations which are very important because places in news becomes very important for prelims. And for mains, you need to have a broad idea about India-China relations, how they are changing, and this border dispute becomes core area of India-China relations. Now, look at this previous year question to understand the importance of this topic. China is using its economic relations and positive trade surplus as tools to develop potential military power status in Asia. In the light of this statement, discuss its impact on India as her neighbor. So India-China relation becomes important, I told you. In the syllabus of GS paper 2, specifically it has been mentioned that India and its neighborhood is very important. So China being our neighbor becomes very important. Now what is exactly happening? Recently, India and China have come up with an agreement. This agreement is related to LAC, that is line of actual control. It says that we are restoring the patrolling rights along the line of actual control, and specifically they have mentioned two areas. One is Depsang and another is Demcho. Now to understand all of this, I'm saying this is one of the biggest news for today, and to understand its importance, you need to know what is line of actual control. You must have heard about LOC. Now that LOC is related to India and Pakistan. Whenever we discuss the India-Pakistan boundary dispute, we talk about this line called LOC. But when it comes to India-China, we talk about LAC, line of actual control. Now see, we assume that India-China map is somewhat like this. But in reality, this region which is named as Aksai Chin, this is under the control of China at present. So right now the line which we consider as the boundary between India and China, it is not formally accepted. It is not international boundary as such. But in reality, in practical sense, the border that exists at this moment is this LAC, that is line of actual control. Now, how did we come to this particular line? See, India and China had this problem of boundary dispute because we never provided or we never demarcated any specific line, or we never provided any specific map of India-China. So the problem is, since the British era, we observe that there is no fixed line which can be considered as international boundary between India and China. Now, because there was no such boundary, and after that we saw the war of 1962. This war in which China attacked India, China had taken control over this region of Aksai Chin. And since that time, Aksai Chin is there with China. Now, that's why we are saying from that time onwards, means from this 1962 war onwards, we have this line called line of actual control. Clear? Now, again, I would repeat, it is not a formally agreed line. It is just that we assume that this is one line. In practical sense, only we have control till this particular location. After that, we do not have any control over the territory. Okay. Now, when we talk about line of actual control, we can see it through three different areas, or we can look at India and China's boundary in three different sectors. Now this first sector is this western sector. So if you look at the Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh map, so here whatever region where we have boundary dispute, this we called western sector. So the area is somewhere around 1570 kilometers, and here we have boundary disputes. I would say this is the most contentious, most struggling part for India-China relations, because whatever fight we take up or whatever incursions take place, they happen in maximum in this western sector. Okay. Then at second number comes this eastern sector. In the eastern sector, you will have this Arunachal Pradesh specifically. So eastern sector is somewhere around 1325 kilometers, which starts from this area of Sikkim till this Arunachal Pradesh. And even in this area, we have problem or we have boundary disputes. Specifically, China claims over this entire region of Arunachal Pradesh, almost entire Arunachal Pradesh. They say that it is part of our Tibet, or they call it South Tibet. So this is also important or most contentious sector. At the third, it will be the central sector. Just a second. So at the third, here we have the central sector. This includes your Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, this area. Now we can say, as compared to this western sector and this eastern sector, this central sector is relatively peaceful. We have not seen much fights or much incursions in this area. So relatively it is quieter, relatively it is better. But western sector is the point of contention, we can say. Clear? So we have three different sectors for line of actual control. Now, just to give you a brief, the western sector includes Jammu and Kashmir and the Xinjiang part of China. Now, here there is a big problem when it comes to western sector. I told you that because Britishers could not draw a fixed boundary, that became a conflict even after our independence. So what happened, the British government at that time tried to bring in some map. First they draw one line in this western sector. The line was named as Johnson line. Now interesting thing about this Johnson line was that according to that Johnson line, Aksai Chin was part of India and not part of China. Okay. Then after some time they also drew one line called McCarthy-McDonald line. Now according to McDonald line, this Aksai Chin is part of China and it is not part of India. So Britishers came up with different lines, and this becomes the part of contention now between India and China, because India says we inherited power from the British India, from the Britishers, and that's why we support this idea of Johnson line and we accept this line as the international boundary. But China says no, we accept this McDonald line and not Johnson line. So this is why we see western sector remains the most contentious section. So if you look at whatever disputes that have taken place, for example, the 1962 war. In this war, they have taken this Aksai Chin, which is part of this western sector, and even the recent disputes which took place in the year 2020, specifically the Galwan Valley clashes, which you must have heard. Those also took place in this western sector only. Clear? Now, if you look at middle sector, I told you it is quieter. Eastern sector, as far as eastern sector is concerned, the dispute is there because one line was drawn by the British government that is named as McMahon line, and this line was drawn in the year 1914. Now to draw this line, British government got in touch with the representatives of Tibet and they drew this line with consensus. But the problem is China said we do not accept this line. Anyway, they do not accept that Tibet is an independent country. They don't accept what Tibetan representatives has done. So they say this line we do not accept. And that's why eventually even this sector became a contentious zone. Clear? Now, moving ahead. What all efforts India and China have taken in order to resolve our border disputes. We had border disputes, but we took some measures also so that we can sort it out. All these issues we can sort it out. So first thing we did is we brought this Panchshil agreement of 1954. Now I'm specifically talking about the agreements or the conversations which had taken place after the independence of India. So after independence, the first major thing was Panchshil Agreement. Now this was an agreement signed between Indian government and the Chinese government. Panchshil, that means it is talking about 5 specific principles that India and China will adhere to. These 5 principles are mutual respect for sovereignty. That means both countries will respect the sovereignty of each other. There will be non-aggression. No country will show any kind of aggression or any kind of attack against the other country. Non-interference. No country is going to interfere in the matters of other country. Fourth, equality, that both countries are having equal status. And fifth, peaceful coexistence. That means both India and China will exist peacefully. Coexist means we both are going to exist together. So we'll not fight. So overall, it seems the agreement is very nice. We're talking about non-aggression at all. But interestingly, in the year 1962, China did not adhere to this Panchshil agreement. Actually, in the year 1960, we saw some boundary talks between Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the Prime Minister of that time, and Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai. They met in the year 1960. They wanted to resolve the issue, but they could not do it. The meeting was a complete failure. And after that, we saw the War of 1962. So we say that these principles were not adhered to in the year 1962. Now the point is, because of this war, the situation became very intense between India and China. Our diplomatic relations also started becoming very deteriorated. So I can say since 1962 till 1976, we did not have any kind of relations at all with China, especially in diplomatic terms. But by 1976, we established our diplomatic relations and we wanted that our issues should be resolved again. Now, in the year 1988, Rajiv Gandhi visited China. There it was decided that we will make some arrangements so that we can resolve this boundary dispute. So they came up with India-China joint working group. Now this joint working group will have some bureaucrats, some personnels who will sit and peacefully try to resolve this boundary dispute. So this is one of the way wherein you are saying that instead of using military, we will use diplomats. Then came this 1993 agreement on the maintenance of peace and tranquility. Now obviously we had fought a war. It's very difficult to reduce the intensity that is there on the border. So we had our military presence in this region. They had their military presence in the boundary. So we decided that we will try to reduce that. We will try to ensure that at the local, at that boundary level, there should not be any fight among our military personnel. So to prevent such skirmishes, it was decided that both countries will respect the status quo condition. Status quo means whatever is the status for now will be considered as the right. For example, if we have, for example, this Aksai Chin, right now this is with China and we do not have this region with us. India is here. So we will say whatever is the situation, we will let it be as it is. So in this agreement, it was decided that we will not go for any fight unless we come up with any kind of resolution. Till that time, let things be as it is. And they also talked about reducing our military troops. So because we had our military standing there, their military standing there, so we decided we'll reduce that troop amount also. This was the agreement in the year 1993. After that, after 3 years, in the 1996, we brought one more agreement. Now see, because both countries have gone for a war earlier, the tensions are high. It's very obvious that no country trusts the other country. India doesn't trust China, China doesn't trust India. So if you want to resolve a boundary dispute, you need to ensure that both countries trust each other. Even if you come up with an agreement and the other country goes against it at one point of time, that how can you trust that person or that particular country? So some confidence building measures were required. Confidence building means we are going to build the trust among each other. So for that we decided that whatever military exercises we conduct in that region, we will reduce that. We will not do such activities. We will not do anything which will escalate the situation or make the situation worse. So this agreement was brought in the year 1996. Now, after that came up a new era in this boundary dispute, wherein in the year 2003, Atal Bihari Vajpayee visited China. And in this visit, it was decided that we will have special representative mechanism. Now this is very interesting. Earlier we were trying to solve this boundary dispute either through our military or through our diplomats. But now it was decided that we will try to solve it through political means. So we are sending political representative. Now political representative simply means that this is the highest authority. So the level of talks has raised from military or diplomatic to the political level. And if we resolve the crisis through political means, that's the final solution, we can say. So special representatives were allocated and this mechanism was started to resolve this issue. And after that, in the year 2013, came this Border Defense Cooperation Agreement. This agreement says that the military commanders that are there, they should have some communication. So there is a commander from China, there is a commander from India. So at local level, we cannot understand what is the escalation or what is the kind of status there at the local level. So at least the military commanders of China and India should communicate, should have some communication channel available through which they can ensure that no situation escalates to a higher stage and it doesn't get into a war. So this is what we can say we have done to settle down our dispute with China, or even China has done this, right? Now, what is happening in recent times? So these all are agreements which we have taken up. We have done all of these things. The trend shows that we were doing really good. China and India doing really good in terms of resolving the problems we had in terms of our boundary dispute. But the things started changing after this. Specifically in the year 2017, we saw Doklam standoff. Now Doklam is a very interesting place. It is at the tri-junction of Bhutan, India and China. So this is the map of Bhutan, this is India and this is China. And here you see Doklam Valley. So it is a tri-junction, means the border of all three countries is there at this particular location. So here we saw Indian military and Chinese military was having a standoff. That means both were standing against each other. Nobody fought, but at least were standing, showing some kind of assertion or aggression towards each other. Obviously, India did that because China was showing some kind of aggression. Now, this was the first incident. After that, in the year 2020, we saw Galwan Valley clash. Now, this was the most dangerous incident in the India-China relations. Here you can see Galwan. So at the Galwan, specifically first some fight took place at Pangongso and then at Galwan. Why I am saying it is one of the most dangerous incident in the India-China relations? Because before 2020, we were trying to resolve the crisis. Both countries were showing interest in resolving the crisis. But in 2020, the reversal took place. China started showing aggression. So whatever we were doing to build the trust and solve the issue, we started doing exactly the reverse thing. And we started escalating the situation. So Galwan Valley clash was the clash in which China did not agree to any agreement. They actually violated all those agreements they have signed and they started with some aggression against India. Now this is a point of contention now. Now after 2020, both India and China started engaging in some military level talks. Now these military level talks were going on since 2020 till 2024, that is till present times. And these are going on for different regions. Now these regions are very important for you, especially from exam perspective. This region called Pangong So Lake, this Galwan, here you will have Daulat Beg Oldie. Here you have this hot springs. Depsang, I would consider these two as very important, specifically Depsang Plains and this Demcho. Now what happened is that whatever talks took place between 2020 and 2024, in those talks we solved the issue to some extent. So Chinese military decided to withdraw from that place. Which place? Pangong So, to some extent even from hot spring area. But Chinese military did not agree to leave this region of Depsang Plains and Demchok. And for Indian government or Indian military, these two places are of very much importance. Strategically, Depsang Plain is very important. Why? It's a plain region. See, most of this region is mountainous. In mountainous regions, it's very difficult to move your military. The military vehicles cannot move very easily. So even if you want to attack or defend, in that case, it is very difficult. But here, Depsang Plains, I am saying it is a plain region. So in the plain region, you can easily move your troops. So any country having control over such region would have a better advantage in terms of military movement. So India would never want that Chinese should be here in the Depsang Plains. Very important. Similarly, even Demchok becomes important because the infrastructure, the trade infrastructure that is there between India and China, the trade routes that are there, they are very near to the Demchok region. Also, in the 1962 war, some skirmishes took place in a village which is very near to this Demchok. So, we feel that even this region is very sensitive. And this is the place when Indian government was building some infrastructure, some civic infrastructure. For example, a kind of a road or something. Chinese started protesting against Indian government. They said that you should not build any infrastructure in this region. So the first time they did was related to this Demchok region. So Indian government feels that these two regions are highly important strategically, right? And Chinese government did not agree to withdraw their forces from this region. Obviously, before 2020, they were not here. But from this Galwan Valley clash, the military of China was present over here. Now came the next phase of our relation, wherein in the year 2024, that is very recently, we have come up with this agreement, patrolling agreement. Now, those who do not know what is patrolling simply means going and monitoring a particular location. For example, let's say our military has control over this much region, but not every military personnel can stand at every location. So what they do is they go for a walk, or let's say with a vehicle they will go on and they will check every region. So this is called patrolling. They will move and they just monitor the area whether it is safe or not. So this monitoring mechanism, that is called patrolling. For that we have come up with an agreement right now. And in this agreement, even these two strategically important locations, that is Depsang Plains and Demchok, which are the most severe friction points, both the countries have decided that we will not have any kind of incursions in this area and we are going to withdraw our forces and we will go back to what was the situation before the year 2020. So return to the pre-2020 status quo along the line of actual control. This is the final concluding point that comes from this 2024 patrolling agreement, which is the recent news obviously. Clear? So all this is happening. Now, there are some points which we need to consider. Even if this agreement is has been signed, or even if it is being published in the newspapers that this agreement has been conveyed, the problem is the China's stance is not very clear, because whatever we are seeing in news is coming from Indian authorities. Chinese government has still not made their stance clear on this agreement. So we cannot trust Chinese very easily. We have to wait for the mechanism, or the what we say, the Chinese authorities, what they say. We have to wait for their comments specifically. Then there is no clarity about the buffer zones, because since 2020 the relations were worse and we started developing other buffer zones. Buffer zones are areas which are just maintained so that there will not be any direct fight among the enemies. So some buffer areas were created after 2020. So are we going to remove those buffer areas or will they continue to exist? There is no clarity about this particular point. Third, what about the patrolling procedure? See, patrolling is done by Indian military also, Chinese military also. But there is a special mechanism, there is a standard operating procedure, there is a step-by-step method through which they do the patrolling. Both sides do it. So, how it will be done? Through the old procedures, or there will be any new mechanisms or new procedures? There is no clarity on this point. Fourth thing is, we do not know what is the motivation of China, because since 2022 till now, we are not having really good relations with China. We are not having really good talks also. So why suddenly China agreed for this particular agreement is a questionable thing. Is it because of some external challenge for China? Is China facing some external challenge? Or if China is going ahead with capturing Taiwan, because of which they want that their western side should be very much stable or peaceful? We do not know Chinese motivation. And at last, if you want to resolve this boundary dispute, it is not going to be solved by just one agreement. Because right now, there is a trust deficit between India and China. Indian government doesn't trust China at all. Even if they sign an agreement, it is very difficult to trust China. So the way is very long and we have to wait for things to become better. So even there is BRICS summit which is going to take place. We'll see if there will be any talks related to India-China border in that summit also. So all these things are taking place. I hope you understand India-China border disputes. So if I have to just briefly say, till 2020 things were going in positive directions, but after 2020 things were going in a negative direction. Now this is a good step. The agreement which has taken place, it's a good step, it's a positive step in the direction of solving border dispute with China. But we have to see what exactly happens. Okay, let me check if there is any question or any doubt. No doubts. Okay, now let's move ahead with the second topic. This is related to secularism. Recently, some petitions were filed in the Supreme Court. One of the member of Rajya Sabha, former member of Rajya Sabha, Subramaniam Swamy, and there were many others also, who filed these petitions in the Supreme Court, saying that this word secularism was not originally part of constitution. It was not written in the constitution directly that India is a secular country. And not just secular, even the socialist word was not written in the constitution. But these two words were added by 42nd Amendment at the time of Indira Gandhi's government. So these petitioners were saying to the Supreme Court that these were not originally part of constitution and we should remove these particular words from the constitution. But Supreme Court on the other hand said that secularism is core feature of constitution. Rather they said it's part of basic structure of the constitution. So the article becomes highly important. And you know, secularism is directly mentioned in your GS paper 1 in the Indian society part, and in this GS paper 2 Indian constitution, as it is part of the basic structure, it becomes important for GS paper 2 also. So you can expect question in any of these two papers. Okay. Now look at this previous year question. How is Indian concept of secularism different from the Western model of secularism? Discuss. So you just need to know what is secularism, what is Indian model, what is Western model. That's it, and you can answer this question. So we'll understand that in detail. Now, first of all, what is secularism? To understand this, look at this diagram. Here I put you, or let's say we can call an individual. Here we have religion, and here we have state or government, or whatever you want to say. Now look at this interesting thing. All three are interrelated. And if you look at individuals, they want to live a good life, they want to live a free life, but they are influenced by both of these elements. State also influences, religion also influences. So if you look at the day-to-day life of yours, you are very much influenced by religion. Let's say you're getting married. The religious rituals become very important for you. So religion has a key role to play in your life, for sure. and you too want to have a good relationship with the religion. Yes, you want to profess your own religion, you use your brain, you use your emotions when it comes to religion. Now if you look at state, there is a relationship between state and the individual. State is a political unit. State has some responsibility towards the individual. For example, if I have to build a road over here, state will come up. If I am facing some financial crisis, let's say the country is facing some economic crisis, it is the responsibility of state to take care of it. So we have a relationship with state, and being a political unit, it is very powerful also. Now it's not like only state is powerful. Even religious institute can become very powerful. Now, if you go back to the medieval time period, in the medieval time period, religion was very powerful. If you look at the European region, in the European region, in the medieval time period, the church was very powerful. Rather, we say church was even more powerful than any king. King is a political authority, but church is more powerful than that. Church was dominating in everything the king had to do. But from medieval times, when we reach to the modern time phase, we started changing the entire system, wherein we said that power will not be there with the church, rather power will be there with the state. So we are saying, when we are dealing with our political affairs, then state is very important. But it was very important that what is the relation between state and religion? I told you, in this, here we have individual, here we have religion, here we have state. Even there is some relationship between religion and state. If religion and state are working together, what if I take an example of Iran? In Iran, the political authority which is at the highest position, just like in India we have president or prime minister who is the highest authority. Similarly, in Iran, the highest authority, that is their supreme leader, is not an elected person, but rather a person who is the religious head. So the person is actually head of the religion, that is the Shia Islam, and that religious leader becomes the political authority. That means if we look at Iran, it seems that the religion and state are tied up. They are going together. Actually, state and religion are actually same. But now, because this was the similar phase in the medieval time phase, wherein we were saying that the religion was very powerful. In the modern time period, we decided that we are going to separate state and religion. We will not have any connection between state and religion. Both will be separate. Religion will do whatever they had to do in their affairs. For example, religion is something very personal. What I do at my home, whatever rituals I do, has nothing to do with state. And state is all about political, economic and social affairs. And here whatever state does has nothing to do with religion. So for example, state is bringing some education policy. So here religion will not say anything. Religion will not say that you have to teach something from our text. They will not say that. Even if they say, state will accept or not, it will be complete discretion of state. We are saying we wanted to separate state and religion. And this is the core idea of secularism. So the struggle from medieval to modern in a modern world started with one of the idea of secularism. So it's a Western concept, if I have to be very specific. It started in the Western world, wherein they wanted to separate state and the religion. And who should be more powerful? It was being said that state should be powerful. So here we have two different models. One model is Western concept of secularism, another is Indian concept of secularism. Now before Indian, let's understand Western concept because it started over there. They said that we are going to divide or separate state and religion in a very strict manner. Now the first idea we see in the France. In France, the separation is very strict. For example, if you are wearing a burqa or hijab and walking on the streets of France, they might not allow it. Why? Because showcasing or displaying the religious things in the public affairs is not acceptable to France. They will say religion has to do with your personal life. So only and at your personal level you practice religion. That is, at your home you practice your religion, whatever you want to do. But when you come to the public life, when you come outside, you cannot showcase your religion. There only state will have the highest power. So state will come up with law, state will regulate these religious institutions, everything will be controlled by state. This is how separation was made. And the idea was that we do not need religion when it comes to our normal day-to-day affairs. For example, if I have to build a road, why do I need any connection with religion? If I have to give education, why do we need religion? This kind of idea was there. Now this is French model. In the Western only, I'm talking about French, which is a little bit extreme. There is one American model or US's model. Here what they do is they give some importance to the individual's liberty to practice their own religion. Now here what will happen is that there will be some freedom given to individuals so that they can practice their own religion. So if I'm an American, I will have the right to practice my religion. It's not like state will completely regulate me. I can practice. For example, if someone is becoming president in USA, they can take the oath of presidency in the name of God. But this will not happen in France. This can happen in USA. But even if some freedom is there, still state is completely separated from the religion. There is no relation of religion with respect to state. There is no relation. Okay. So even if you can take the oath in the name of God, the government or the state is not going to support any specific religion. In USA, the government or state will not have any official religion as such. So this is the case where we are saying that state and religion is completely separated. Clear? This is the Western concept of this secularism. Now moving ahead, if you look at Indian concept. In India, we do not have much problem with religion. We like religion. Rather, religion is core part of our life. We cannot live our life without religion because it is part of way of life. So in India, the idea of secularism is relatively different. Here, we have separation between religion and state. But this separation is not so strict, just like France or America. It is not that strict. It is relatively porous, we can say. How? We have a concept called Sarva Dharma Samabhav. Sarva Dharma Samabhav means the Indian state will have the feeling or the attitude of equality and non-discrimination towards all the religions. We are going to live separate. The state will not usually interfere in the matters of religion, and religion will also not interfere in the matters of state. But if there requires some kind of intervention, then the state can go ahead with that. Let's say, for example, in the name of religion, some bad practice is going on. For example, sati pratha was going on. For example, untouchability is going on. And if this is being done in the name of religion, now this is not acceptable to the Indian government or state. So they can intervene. They can make some rules and they can intervene in the life of religions. But this intervention is not going on in that strict way wherein everything is being regulated. Because under Article 25 to 28, if you see, we have right to freedom of religion. So I have right to practice my own religion. Even religious institutes have their own rights. They can take care of their daily day-to-day affairs, and state cannot interfere in that. So how a temple is being run or how some religious institution is being run internally, it has nothing to do with the state, and state doesn't intervene in that. Only when some bad practice is going on, some oppressive practice is going on, then state can intervene. So here we are saying we do not have strict separation, but we have some porous borders. So this model is relatively different from what we have seen in the Western side. So in Western world, we said we will not have any official religion as such. Even in Indian concept, in Indian state, we do not have official religion as such. But Indian government makes funding to many religious groups. For example, there was Hajj Yatra. For that, government used to provide some funding. So there can be anything, whether it is a minority religion or majority religion. government can make any kind of funding to the religious institutions. This will not happen in the Western countries, but this will happen in the Indian context. So overall, Indian secularism is all about equal respect for all religions, obviously, and inter-religious and intra-religious equality. Between religions, there is equality. Within religions also, there is equality. Clear? Now, if we talk about the concept of secularism in terms of our constitution. When the constitution was being made, the constitution makers did not put this word secularism in the constitution. There was nothing mentioned as such as this word called secularism, because at that time it was being considered as a Western concept, so it was not established. But if you look at the core principles or the core philosophy of our constitution, you will see that we are secular. The government is not having any state religion on its own. Government treats all the religions equally. That gives a sense of secularism anyway. So if you look at the preamble of the constitution, earlier there was no word called secular, but through the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, the word secular was added in it. But even if we do not look at this, we can see Article 25, 26, 27, 28, even Article 29 and 30. If you read all of this, you will see that the state is treating all the religions equally, and the right to practice religion is also being respected by the state. And there is separation between state and religion also. Because when, for example, this right, protect the rights of religious denomination to manage their own affairs in the matter of religion. This is saying that a religious organization can manage their own affairs. That means religion, whatever they do in their own area of sphere or in their own sphere, has nothing to do with the state. State will not interfere in this. This is their fundamental right. So this is how we have also separated state and religion. Clear? Now moving ahead. There are some Supreme Court judgments which also established that secularism is a core feature of the constitution. For example, we have Keshwanand Bharti versus State of Kerala. The case was in the year 1973. In this case, the idea of basic structure was established. Court said that even if we have constitution with so many articles and all, there is a basic structure. For example, let's say you are building, you have this big building, but there is a basic structure which you first create. On the basis of that basic structure, remaining building is developed. So similarly, there is some basic structure which cannot be changed. You can make amendments in the constitution, but you cannot change what the basic structure was. And court has said that even secularism is part of that basic structure. That means you can change anything, but you cannot remove secularism from the constitution. And this was the Keshwanand Bharti case. Then if you look at S.R. Bommai versus Union of India 1994, it clearly said that India or the Indian state treats all the religions equally, but we will not be neutral. We will support them. And there, even if secularism was not part of constitution originally, still philosophically or in its essence, it was part of the constitution. So even if we have not added it, let's say in case Indira Gandhi would not have come up with this amendment and bring this word in the constitution, still secularism would have been part of basic structure of the constitution. This is the judgment, S.R. Bommai. So overall we can say that secularism is important for India. It is part of core feature of Indian constitution. Clear? Now, any doubts? No doubts. Now the third and last topic, that is related to nature restoration law. So recently, that means it's been 3-4 months, when European Union had brought a nature restoration law, after which some discussion started that why did they require such a law, and do we also require such a law in India? So we are going into the discussion of this particular part. This can be important for prelims as well as mains. In mains GS paper 3, there is environment, conservation of environment, environmental pollution, environmental degradation. These topics are important because this law is being brought up because of this environmental degradation. Now, look at this previous year question. Biocarbon Fund Initiative for Sustainable Forest Landscapes is managed by which of the following? So such direct questions are asked. So even related to this restoration law, you can expect some question. Now, what is the context? If you look at the entire world, the problem we are facing at this moment is that the entire ecosystem, entire biodiversity is getting degraded. You look at water, the water either is getting polluted or the water level is rising. There's some problem with water resources. If you look at the forest, we have destroyed forest already. If you look at any kind of species, the number of species are reducing. So overall, if I have to say, if you look at the entire ecology or ecosystem, you will observe that we are observing some degradation. So we are observing land degradation, biodiversity loss, we are observing climate change taking place. Overall, entire ecosystem is getting degraded. And everyone wants to solve this issue now. Not everyone is that ready, but at least some are taking some steps. For example, when European Union got to know that it's a serious concern in their country, they decided that they will come up with a special law. So if you look at this, European Union's Nature Restoration Law, which was brought in 2024, this is trying to restore whatever is getting destroyed or degraded. They are trying to restore, make it just like what was it earlier. For that, they are bringing this law. So this law will have some mandatory mechanisms and some objectives through which they will try to restore the entire ecosystem. Now, what is this law specifically? The situation was becoming very worse in the European region. There was a report in which it was claimed that 81% of the natural habitats in the European region has got degraded. It is in a very poor status. If you look at any species, for example, bee, out of 3 bees, one is getting died and getting removed from the ecosystem. They saw that most of the species are dying. And if in this way species start dying, that means there will be some problem with your ecosystem. And it's not like if one species is dying and you will not worry about it. All of us are dependent on one another. If you have read about food chain or food web, so we have a chain and every animal or every plant will have some relation with the other. So it's a serious situation. After which they brought this law. In this law, they said that 20% of the European Union's land and sea area to be restored by 2030. Now, we already have made some commitments, whether it is India or European countries or USA, we all have made some commitments that we are going to improve the situation with respect to climate change. We have decided that we will not let the temperature, global temperature rise. And in this manner, this becomes one additional step wherein European Union is saying that they will restore 20% of land as well as sea area. And the ultimate goal is full ecosystem should be restored by the year 2050. So they have a very ambitious goal. By 2050, they are saying whatever degradation has taken place, we will reverse that and we will restore all the ecosystem back. So it's a good objective. Now for that, they will be working on various ecosystems. If they will talk about forest, they'll try to restore all the forest. They'll talk about rivers. They'll talk about agricultural lands. Even in urban areas, nowadays, if you see, many governments are taking such actions wherein they are trying to create some green spaces in the urban areas. So such actions are being taken. And all of this is part of European Union's biodiversity strategy for 2030 and European Green Deal, which they have already done. So this nature restoration law is a part of that particular thing. And through this, they are bringing so many initiatives. If I have to give just one or two examples, they said that they are going to restore 25,000 kilometers of rivers. So whatever rivers, either they got degraded or polluted or whatever, they are going to restore back. How much? 25,000 kilometers. Even they said that they are going to plant 3 billion trees by 2030. Again, a very ambitious target, 3 billion trees, and just by 2030. So all such steps will be taken, and this is being mandated by this law. because there is a law, there will be mandatory mechanism on, or there will be some mandate on the government side, they will have to do it. So such things are being taken care of. Now the question is, do India require such kind of an act? Why, and why do we actually need it? So look at the situation that exists in India. For example, if you look at the land in India, how much land is getting degraded? So some studies have claimed that almost 30% of India's land is getting degraded. You look at whether you look at agriculture, the forest, or water resources, anything. And if you talk about specific ecosystem, let's say if I talk about one ecosystem, for example, Chilka Lake or even the Sundarban. Sundarban in itself is an ecosystem. We have seen many reports, whether from IUCN or many other institutes. They said that these ecosystems' health is getting degraded with time and it is rapidly degrading. So overall, we are saying we need to work on this angle, and for that even we need such a law which European Union has brought in. Then we have a lot of agriculture in India, and agriculture practices are also creating some problems. They are degrading the quality of soil and quality of agriculture that we are doing. So if we want to go ahead with sustainable agriculture, again we will require some law which will ensure that we take care of the entire ecosystem. Then we also have made some commitments, just like European Union has made commitments. We have also made commitments related to climate change. So if you talk about Paris climate deal, we also have talked about some commitments that we are going to reduce our carbon emission and all. Now if you want to reduce carbon emission, one of the best ways is to restore your ecosystem. Let's say there is a forest. Earlier there was a forest, but now it has got degraded. But if you restore the forest back, then the entire forest can reduce the carbon emission substantially. So this will be taken care of. And even we can go ahead with these urban green spaces. Right now in the urban area, specifically in India, if you talk about Mumbai, Delhi or any other city, we are facing a problem of urban heat island, wherein the cities are getting more heated because we have concrete roads, we have concrete constructions which will put the heat within the city, and there are no spaces for the air to flow, because of which the intense heating goes on. So if we have such green spaces, if we restore the ecosystem, then we can resolve that issue to a great extent. So overall we are trying to say even India needs such nature restoration law. And at last, if we go ahead with that, it will have some benefits in other aspects also. For example, if we bring this nature restoration law, it will improve our agricultural production. It will improve our agricultural productivity also. Productivity means whatever amount of grains we are getting from one particular land, that will also increase. We can create some green jobs. We can improve our water security. So water, if we are restoring our water resources, if there was a pond earlier, it is not now, right now, so we will restore it, then we will have those resources. So water security will become better. And overall, when we talk about SDGs, sustainable development goals, all the countries are working on it. This is one of the ways through which you can achieve these sustainable development goals. This is what the article is trying to say. Clear? So overall we have covered all the three articles. Now this one thing, that in Narayana group the admissions are open for the academic year 2025-26 for the inter as well as degree courses. Okay, now thank you so much. We will meet again in the next session. Thank you.